As promised, here's my spoiler-filled review of Avengers Age of Ultron. If you haven't seen it yet, put this video on your watch later list, go see the movie, and then come back to watch. However, if you want to watch my spoiler-free review, the link is in the description below. Now let's talk about some Age of Ultron spoilers. As you know, I really enjoyed this movie. I'm conflicted on which I like more, the first movie or the second movie. But that doesn't negate this movie. I absolutely loved this movie. I'm going to buy it on Blu-ray when it comes out. And if Joss Whedon is going to release his cut of the film out on Blu-ray and DVD, I'm going to get that immediately. First off, all the action was great. That opening sequence in the film where they infiltrate Von Strucker's Hydra base, I thought that was a great way to open the film. And seeing all the Avengers have moments, we see Cap and Thor use their shield and Thor's hammer to create that sonic boom like they did in the first film. And speaking of which, I love Cap's suit in this film more than the other suits in the other films. It's like this suit is a combination of the suit he wore in the Avengers, which I hated, and the suit that he wore in the Winter Soldier, which I loved. And we get our first intro into Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch. Tony finds Loki's scepter, and the Scarlet Witch comes from behind him and puts a vision in his head, and he sees all the Avengers dead and defeated. And I love what they did with Tony Stark in this film. He is so obsessed with putting something together to protect the world and prevent the Avengers from being dead that he will do just about anything, and anything he does will be the right thing he does. So Tony Stark, he uses the artificial intelligence within Loki's scepter to create his Ultron program, which is a peacekeeping program to keep the world safe. And Tony Stark even brings Bruce Banner into the picture. And later on, when they take Vision away from Ultron, Stark still hasn't learned nothing from the whole experience. He still wants to make it work, but I love the dynamic between Stark and Cap because it's planting the seeds for Civil War. That scene where everybody gangs up on Tony Stark and asks what happened, Tony Stark is like, does anybody remember when I put a missile through a portal in New York City? We were standing right under it. We're the Avengers. We can bust weapon dealers, but how do we cope with something like that? And Captain America's like, together. And then Stark asks, but what if we lose? And Steve Rogers is like, we'll do that together too. There are a few moments in the movie where Cap had me like, see, that's why you're Captain America. And he had a few moments, and he had a couple of funny moments within this movie that played to him. Because again, he is a man out of time. Cap was like, language. And throughout the whole movie, everybody just clowns Cap for that. And that's one of the things I loved about this movie is the humor. Like when Tony first gets into Strucker's base, he's like, come on guys, let's talk. And then the guards are like, no, we will not talk. And they all point his guns at him. And then Stark is like, all right. And then the guns come out of his Iron Man suit and then he just shoots everybody. And then Stark is like, nice talk. And then the soldiers are like, no, it wasn't. Even Strucker is like, can we hold them? And then the soldiers are like, they're the Avengers. And then Strucker's like, I want y'all to hold your ground. We are not going to surrender. And then he turns to Mark and is like, look, we're going to surrender. I absolutely love the scene where everybody's at the Avengers headquarters and tries to lift up Thor's hammer. Like first Hawkeye tries to lift it and Tony Stark is like, Clint, you've had a rough week. We won't hold it against you if you can't get it up. And I don't know if anyone got that joke, but I got it and it was hilarious. And speaking of which, I love what they did with Hawkeye in this movie because in the first movie, he kind of got the short end of the stick. Yeah, but in this movie, they gave him the treatment he deserves. When the Scarlet Witch is hypnotizing everybody, she tries to get Hawkeye. But then Hawkeye comes from behind and sticks her in the forehead. And he's like, yeah, I've done the whole mind control thing before. Not a big fan. I love that he took it back because it's a callback to the first movie. And later on in the film, after they had lost that battle, he takes them to his family's house for hiding. It's the things like that of how they give Hawkeye character development. And even in this movie, he questions his role in the Avengers. Laura's like, I see you with the Avengers, and well, and then he's like, you don't think they need me? And then Laura's like, actually, I think they do. They're gods, and they need someone to keep them down on Earth. I even remember while I was watching the movie, they kept teasing that he had a girlfriend or a wife or whatever. And I was like, oh great, who they choose to pick his wife? And it was Linda Carlini. To which you may know her from the show Freaks and Geeks. I know her from playing Velma in the Scooby-Doo movies. But nonetheless, she was good as Hawkeye's wife. Now to go to the Scarlet Witch real quick, I love, like I said, Elizabeth Olsen, she did a good job playing her in this movie. And she's ultimately the person that sets up the whole Ultron situation because she puts visions in Tony Stark's mind. And later on, she thinks she's doing the right thing, but then later on, she realizes Ultron's true vendetta. And then during that final battle, she's like, it's all my fault. But then Hawkeye, he calms her down and he's like, it's your fault, it's our fault, but who cares? Are you up for this? Because there's robots attacking us, we're sitting on the city is floating, and people are in danger, and I'm fighting with gods, and I have a bow and arrow. I know none of this makes sense. but I'm gonna go back out there. Why? Because it's my job. If you step out that door, you are an Avenger. I love that speech that he gave her because it was pretty much his way of saying, yes, I know I have a bow and arrow. I'm fighting with a god, a genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist, and a super soldier, this green rage monster. What do I have to offer? But he does it because it's his job and it's what he does best. And that's what makes Hawkeye awesome. Jeremy Renner and even the filmmakers, they're taking the character back. As I said before, I felt like Quicksilver, he kind of got sidelined in this movie, but honestly, he was good, and Aaron Taylor Johnson, he worked with what he got, and he made the role work. Throughout the film, he was with Hawkeye, and throughout the film, he's like, "You didn't see that coming," and then Hawkeye gets his back when he says, "You didn't see that coming," and then Quicksilver, he sacrificed himself when Hawkeye, he's about to save this kid from Ultron shooting this machine gun at them, and at that moment, you think Hawkeye's gonna die, as most people would, but then no, Quicksilver, he saves him, and he's like, and he has 8 holes in him. He sacrificed himself to save Hawkeye and the kid. And then Quicksilver, he says, "You didn't see that coming." As I said before, the Hulkbuster scene, that is one of my favorite action scenes within this movie. I actually appreciated what they've done with the Hulk and Natasha in this movie. And what I wanted to see with anything Hulk before. It's like they dive into the character of the Hulk, and the Hulk, he's becoming more dangerous, that he's actually killing people when he doesn't even realize this, and even Bruce realizes this. But that what makes Natasha likes Bruce. And she even mentions it. "All my friends are fighters. You are different." And there's even a one scene where they're at Hawkeye's house and he's saying, "We can't even start a family." And Bruce is like, "I can't have this, any of this. There is no place on earth I can go where I'm not a monster." And then Natasha's like, "You know what my final test was in the Red Room? They sterilized me. Said it was the one less thing to worry about. You think you're the only loner on this team?" And it made sense of why Natasha would want to be with Bruce Banner. Getting back to more of the side characters, I like the addition of Andy Serkis as Ukulele's Claw in the movie to set up the Black Panther movie to come in the not-too-distant future. But he's in the movie because Ultron, he needs vibranium, and that's what Ukulele is in charge of. And that's one of the things I love about this movie is the Easter eggs. Like the visions that the Scarlet Witch gives the Avengers in this movie, like the vision that Black Widow has, it's visions of when she was at the Red Camp, which we have seen in the show Agent Carter, where Black Widow was trained. We see Captain America, he has a vision that he's having that dance with Peggy Carter, and then Thor gets a vision that he's back on Asgard and Asgard is going to hell. And I can only assume that's gonna play into Ragnarok. And that is a great way to segue into my next point. In Loki's scepter is the Mind Stone, which is an Infinity Stone, and that's one of the things I kind of didn't like about this movie. It's like Thor had a side mission in his movie where he goes to this lake where he sees visions, or he can go further into this vision. But long story short, it leads into the Infinity Stones, which leads into the Infinity War. Hopefully this does play into the Infinity Wars and Ragnarok. This was just an excuse for Thor to take his shirt off for the ladies. But in the 3-hour cut, I hope they expand upon that. Vision in this movie, I was a little skeptical, but I was surprised with him. But my knowledge of Vision came from the Fox cartoon show The Avengers, which featured Vision, and that's where my knowledge of the Vision ends. But I loved what they did with him, and I liked how practical he looked, and I couldn't, like most of the time I couldn't tell, is that CGI or is that a human with a bunch of CGI elements? So I'm like, yeah, that's him, because I can even look at Vision's face and see, yep, that's Paul Bettany. And I do know for a fact Vision, he isn't all good, but he was pretty much all good in this movie. It's just like, and he's on the side of good, but he understands where the bad is coming from and knows their motivations. But he's definitely on the side of the Avengers, and to me, the icing on the cake of we know that we can trust him is when he picked up Thor's hammer, and everyone in the audience, including the Avengers themselves, they were in awe. Because remember, in that scene where everyone tries to pick up Thor's hammer and Captain America, he even punches it a little bit, to which Thor was getting a little worried there, and everyone in the audience laughed. But seeing Vision holding it, we all knew, yep, he's on the side of good, and Vision, he means business. And finally, Ultron in the movie. I feel like Ultron's origin story in this movie was a bit rushed. He just come out of the mind jump, and then he realized, oh, what is this? What is this? And then he finds Jarvis, and then he attacks him and just kills him. And then he goes into the Ultron box, and then he just decides, oh, screw humans, I'm destroying the world. But nonetheless, now I know most people had a problem with Ultron because the trailers, they made him out to be this menacing figure that'll give you nightmares or whatnot. But when you watch the actual movie, he's a little more funny, but he has a sadistic humor. Now, I can understand why you would feel that way. If the trailers gave him out like he means all business and no jokes, I would too. But honestly, like I'm not that attached to Ultron because honestly, this was my first introduction to Ultron. But with Ultron in this movie, I'd say they handled him very well and he was still intellectual and menacing, and he just had a sadistic humor. And in my opinion, he had some of the best dialogue within this movie. Like, the whole you want to protect the world, but you don't want it to change. And he feels the only way you can have peace is if the human race is destroyed. But I do feel like when Ultron he finally gets killed by the Vision, I felt like it was a little anticlimactic. But nonetheless, I still like that scene because it was like to me like that was two people. They're trying to understand each other and they understand both of each other's motivations and they want to help the world, but they have two ideologies. It's like Professor X and Magneto talking to each other. And I even like how that conversation ends with Ultron saying the world needed a shield. Stark settled for a slave, and then Vision's like human beings are fearful and in need of protection. But then that fear can inspire them to do great things. And then Ultron's like, you're unbelievably naive. And then Vision's like, well, I was born yesterday. And then he uses his gem in his forehead to just kill him. Long story short, with the Hulk and Tasha Romanoff side story, the Hulk he fights Ultron in his plane and takes him out, and then the Hulk's pretty much just stuck in that plane and we don't know where he's going. But as for the movie ends, Thor he pretty much goes back to Asgard. Tony Stark, I guess he retires. Black Hawkeye he goes back to his family and retires, I guess for a while until Civil War. We don't know what we'll do for them. But then we also get a glimpse of our new Avengers. Like we have Captain America and Black Widow leading, and the newest Avengers are Rhodey, aka War Machine, Sam Wilson, aka Falcon, Vision, and the Scarlet Witch. And speaking of which, I like that they added War Machine in most of the movie, but I wish they would have added Falcon in most of the movie as well. I don't know, maybe that's in the 3-hour cut as well. And of course, the end credit scene, which is with Thanos. He takes the Infinity Gauntlet and he's like, fine, I'll do it myself. And of course, that leads into the Infinity War. In the end, I absolutely loved this movie. It was a great closing chapter to Phase 2. The characters were great, the action was great, the story was great. I loved what Joss Whedon did with certain characters, and I loved how deep it got. And I can't wait to see how this affects any future movies. And this was the best theater experience I've had all year. And yes, over Furious 7. Like I'm telling you, like I was just watching this movie with a big crowd up in the city, and everyone was cheering on, laughing, and having a good time. All that was music to my ears. And even the trailers before it, I had a good time with. Like we saw the Pixels trailer, the Star Wars Episode 7 trailer, the Batman v Superman trailer. Like seeing trailers like that brought joy to my heart because I finally get to see those trailers on the big screen. I am absolutely looking forward to more Marvel movies. I'm looking forward to more Avengers movies, and I am looking forward to more superhero movies. I don't care if they're from Marvel. I don't care if they're from DC. I just want them to be good. 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 That's all I care about. And if they're good, it is music to my eyes. I absolutely love comic book movies. This is what I go to the movies for the enjoyment, and comic book movies bring me enjoyment. And they are definitely dominating the movie screen right now. Especially for this new era of the 2010s that we're getting ready to go into. These are going to be the biggest movies of the 2010s right now. Coming from Marvel, DC, we got a whole bunch of good superhero movies coming out within the next 4 to 5 years. And we all should just embrace and enjoy it because before, superhero movies were just looked at as a joke and couldn't be taken seriously. Now look at what it is. They make billions of dollars, people take them seriously, whether they're fun, serious. I gave this movie an A+ for full price, and I'm going to stick to that rating. And again, I want to thank y'all for taking this journey with me through all the Marvel and Fast and Furious movies with me, leading up to their newest films. Now, I do plan on doing this again with future releases coming up this year. Like, I'm going to do it again for Star Wars, Hunger Games. I'm thinking about doing this with the Terminator. I haven't decided yet. Only thing I'm going to do differently is I'm going to do it monthly instead of weekly because, honestly, I am burnt out from doing these reviews. And I still want to do other videos like the rundown videos and my own videos or whatever. That way, if I do it monthly, it will be a lot more easier for me, and I won't get tired of doing it. That's it for the day. Like what you see, subscribe to this channel, subscribe to my other channel. The links are in the description below. And be sure to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Tumblr, and Instagram. Peace.